The movie begins on a desolate desert planet called Arrakis, which is governed by a ruthless house called the Harkonnens. They cultivated these rare spices for the Emperor, which are essential for extending life and space travel throughout the known universe. These spices can only be found on Arrakis. During their time on Arrakis, the Harkonnens treated the people very poorly, which led to many unrest and finally a revolt. A group fighting against the Harkonnens were known as the Freemen. They fought for years in the desert trying to destroy the Harkonnens' spice production and hopefully to free the planet from their grasp, but in the end they could not eradicate them or free Arrakis. One day, for unknown reason, the Emperor Shaddam IV orders the Harkonnens to leave Arrakis and return to their homeworld, which is called Giedi Prime, at once, to which they immediately comply so not to face the wrath from the Emperor. Glossu Rabban of the House of Harkonnen, known as the Beast, returned home, which is on Giedi Prime, to inform his uncle Baron Vladimir that the last of their ships have left Arrakis. He also asked angrily to his uncle, "How can the Emperor take away all that they have built on Arrakis and just give it to the House of Atreides?" The Emperor's spokesperson responded by saying, "When is a gift not a gift?" Then the Baron explained to his nephew about how jealous the Emperor is and that no one should be in his way. In the next scene shows the arrival of the Emperor's envoy to the planet of Caladan, home to the Atreides house. They land a spacecraft, resembling a huge round ball, with 4 gigantic landing legs. The Emperor's messenger, witnesses from the members of the Imperial Court and representatives of the Space and Guild, along with a sister of the Bene Gesserit, emerges from the ship as the huge ship's door opens. After bowing to the Duke, the messenger read off the Emperor's decree stating that the House of Atreides will take over the governing of the planet Arrakis, effective immediately. As the Duke steps forward, all of his men started chanting the name, Atreides. Atreides, Atreides. The Duke places his seal on the decree after accepting the mission, to make it official. He then look at the messenger and ask, "So it is done?" And the Emperor's messenger reply, "It is done." That night, Paul's mother reminds him of his training before seeing Mother Jesuit. After arriving, Mother Jesuit commands Paul to kneel in front of her and to place his hand in the box, while at the same time place a poison needle at the base of his neck. After passing the test, Paul was allowed to remove his hand from the box and the Mother Jesuit left. Paul asked his dad if he could go with Duncan on the advance party to Arrakis. His dad, the Duke, declined his request, stating that he needs him nearby when we arrive on Arrakis. Here, we have the ship carrying the House of Atreides and the leadership staff landing on Arrakis. After the ship landed, Gurney and his men along with the leadership staff walked down the ramp on the right side of the Duke and his family, being alert for any trouble that may occur. While walking, Paul looked around to see rows of Atreides soldiers standing in formation. At the end of the path, they were greeted by the commanding officer of the advance party that the Duke had sent to prepare for his arrival. Paul could hear a few of the local chant a prophecy of the Lisan al-Gaib. Back on Giedi Prime, the Emperor's spokesperson informed the Baron that he will strengthen his hands against the House of Atreides by providing him with his army. The Bene Gesserit reminded the Baron that Paul and his mother will not be harmed since they are under the protection of the Jesuit order. Duncan reports his findings about the Freemen's population and whereabout on Arrakis. He brought in Stilgar, leader of the Freemen, to talk with the Duke. After meeting and talking with Stilgar, the Duke wanted to fly out and take a look at the mining sites. Before leaving, he was introduced to Dr. Liet Kynes, who is the Imperial ecologist. The doctor took this opportunity to inspect the still suits that they were wearing, since it could be life or death in this harsh environment. While inspecting the still suits, she looked at Paul and asked him who showed him how to wear it, and he responded with no one. It just seems that this is how it's supposed to be. While flying to look at one of the mining vehicle, they spotted a giant worm heading toward one of the mining vessels. After Paul and Gurney helped everyone on board, they looked down to see the giant sandworm swallowing the mining vessel whole. The Emperor's spokesperson came to Salusa Secundus. It was a gloomy and wet day because of all the rain, as he personally inspected the troops along with the commanding officer. A ceremony was being performed for the Emperor's elite troop going into combat. After the inspection of the elite soldiers, he informed the commander that 3 battalions will be deployed to Arrakis to support the Harkonnens' surprise attack on the House of Atreides. That night, 3 soldiers that was guarding the entrance to the shield generator room were shot and immobilized by a figure in the shadow. After walking past the incapacitated soldiers, the figure enters the room and lowers the shield to base, then left. The Harkonnens, along with the Emperor's elite soldiers, flew into the compound without any resistance. The Duke was awoken by sounds coming from outside of the building. As he walked to the window, he could see lights all over the compound. After leaving his chamber to investigate, he came across a servant laying on the ground. As he rolled her over to help, he can tell that she was stabbed. At that same moment, he was shot by a dart from a shadow figure that he recognized was his doctor. Gurney was awoken and was informed by a sentry on duty that the shield to the compound was down. After leaving the barracks, he could see that they were under attack and order everyone to start a counterattack as his charge toward the troop transporter. The compound anti-aircraft missile batteries started to fire on the enemy's fighters, while the enemy's missiles hitting and destroying the troop transporter that was on the ground. Inside the building, the Atreides soldiers did their best to fend off the Harkonnens but was later defeated by the Emperor's elite. During the Harkonnens' surprise attack, Duncan went looking for Paul to take him to safety but found 4 Emperor's soldiers instead. After spotting them, he made quick work of them one by one, proving that they were no match. Failing to find Paul, Duncan then took a flyer to engage the enemies by blowing up their transport vessels with the missiles on board just before flying away. Paul managed to use his voice to momentarily hypnotize one of the soldiers to remove the gag from his mother's mouth. After being captured by the Harkonnen, she then commanded the soldier to kill the younger soldier in the back and cut the ropes off of Paul's feet. As soon as Paul was free, he knocked down the soldier to the floor. After hearing all the commotion in the back of the flyer, the pilot turned around just to fall victim to Lady Jessica's voice and commanded him to give her his knife, only to be used on him and the one Paul knocked out. After the flyer landed in the desert, Paul and his mom took the survival gear and abandoned the flyer. The next morning, Paul dug out of the tent that was buried by the sand during the night after sensing movement from above just to see a sand mouse. After helping his mom out, they saw a flyer flown by Duncan, who has been looking for them all night. Duncan landed the flyer and raced toward Paul to embrace him and to let him know that his father is dead. He then kissed Paul's hand and said that he is now Duke of the House of Atreides. Duncan flew Paul, who is now Duke, to a safe location. As soon as they landed, the freemen that guard the facility quickly covered the flyer with a tarp so it could not be seen from the sky. After entering the facility and heading to the main room, Duncan had a bad feeling as he passed by the 2 freemen standing by the door. Duncan walked back into the hallway and sealed the door before fighting and killing the Emperor's elite soldier. Eventually, the Sardaukar outnumbered Duncan and was able to stab him through his personal shield. While Duncan was fighting the Sardaukar, Dr. Liet Kynes lead Paul and his mother to a hidden flyer so that they can avoid being killed. Once there, Paul jumped in and started to prep the flyer for flight. As they took off, 3 enemy flyers spotted them and gave chase. Paul did his best to outmaneuver them, but could not shake them off his tail. After spotting a sandstorm, Paul flew his flyer right into it, hoping that the other would not follow. However, Paul was wrong and the 3 flyer flew in after him. In the sandstorm, the 3 enemy flyer was destroyed while Paul survived. After going through the sandstorm, his flyer crashed in one piece close to a rock. After getting out of the crash flyer, Paul and his mom moved as fast as they can to the nearest rock. After they put on their still suits, Paul shows his mom how to walk on the sand without attracting sandworms before going looking for freemen for help. Lady Jessica and Paul was about to leave with Stilgar and the freemen into the desert when Jaimius challenged her for the leadership position since she defeated Stilgar in a fight. He explained to them that only the strong can lead, and since she defeated Stilgar, she is now the leader of the freemen by right. However, Stilgar stated that it is not right to fight a lady. At that moment, Paul stepped up to be her champion. When the fight began, Paul would easily counter Jaimius' attacks and put him in a killing position and ask him to yield to stop the fight, only to find out that there is no yielding and only death can stop the fight. In the end, Paul killed Jaimius with one quick move. After Jaimius fell to the ground, Paul knelt down beside him and grabbed his hand to say goodbye. As Paul walked away from Jaimius, other freemen reached out to touch Paul to show their acceptance of him and his mother into their tribe. While walking with the freeman in the desert, Paul and his mom saw a freeman riding a sandworm and hearing a freeman saying that this is only the beginning.